So maybe we could just start by, let's just talk about Troy first. I mean, this is really for both of you. Like, where did this character come from? Yeah, why don't we start there?
So I've had this thing where I wrote this script in '97. I've always wanted to make this this comedy about domestic violence, but it's not really a comedy about domestic violence. It's a comedy that has domestic violence in it, because never are you meant to laugh at the domestic violence in this. But I've always wanted to approach it with empathy and just instead of finding out who the monsters are, I've always wanted to look at what the cycle of violence actually is. So a big thing for me was like watching movies where the lead characters were like really unlikable, you know, or for example, a TV series like The Office. David Brent from The Office. He's a super like repugnant guy, but like you're also rooting for him, right? Well, you're never really rooting for Troy. You're never rooting for Troy, but I also want him to feel like someone that you might actually know. You know, all the abusive men that I've ever known, all the abusive men in my family, they were all people that actually came across as super charming. You know, they're not super villains. They don't all act like Hannibal Lecter. And so one thing I thought was really cool was just watching Patrick Capino on stage, or whether it was in National Film Service. Sorry, I know. I'm sorry. Society. I'm on 2 hours of sleep. Sorry. National Film Society. He's a super likable guy. So I sent him the script. I would want to know what he would think.
I'll continue that story. He sends me the script, and I read it, and he asks me, like, "Is there a character that resonates with you?" And I said, "Sure, Mo." Pretty mellow guy. I'm like, I could do that. And then he's like, interesting. How about Troy? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I could do that. But, you know, to be honest, I was like very flattered and touched that he trusted me with that character. And I said, if you trust me, I trust you, and let's see what happens.
So what happened then? Like, how did you start building that character together?
Oh.
Because it's easy to turn it into a caricature, but also you don't want it to be too familiar in a domestic way. You want it to be somewhat monstrous. So how did that come about?
I mean, I talked to HP about what he was looking for and what he wanted, and I think that you know, a lot of it is just getting the words off the page, because I will say the script you gave me was very long. It was like 190 pages, and I had 90 pages of scenes. And so first it was just getting it off the page, getting into my mouth, and then you know, just literally just finding those moments. You know, you're not Troy. You're just playing these scenes, and you and HP did a good job of giving all of us permission to do what we need to do. You know, he's like, "That's okay, do that." There was one scene which didn't make the cut, which was a lot of fun, where I'm watching women's beach volleyball, and he just tells me to say like the most misogynistic, offensive things ever, and it was fun. But he gave me permission to do that, and I was like, "Okay, this is not gonna make the cut, I hope." But yeah, it was just a great environment to be able to you know, push it a little bit.
What was the environment like? I mean, it's such a heavy topic. I mean, this is for everybody. Did you feel like you had to walk on like eggshells a little bit because of the topic? And did that impede your creativity in filming it and performing in it too?
I'll start by saying that it was really important to me to get the right crew and the right cast, right? I think the obvious answer when you say what this movie is about is it's a movie about domestic violence, but I'd like to think that by the end, by that still frame, that you realize it's a movie about masculinity. It's a movie about toxic masculinity. And I was like, okay, we can't have any toxic men on this set. Like, this has to be like super empowering and warm and family oriented. So, for example, I'll share this, and we should pass it on to Jonathan and Patrick. But Amelie Anima, the girl who plays Mina in the film, she was a little worried. She's like, do I have to see violence? Am I going to see violence in this film? I said, You will. She says, is there any way to trick that? And I was like, wow, these kids know about editing. I said, there's actually one shot where I need you to be in the same shot. It's true. I do want you to be there, but you know what I want you to do? I want you to help me choreograph it. So she actually helped direct Patrick and Teresa, who played Troy, during the violent scenes. And there was something really kind of because she was really scared at first, and then after the first rehearsal, she was like a pro. She's like, "Yeah, I don't buy it. Yeah, that doesn't really look violent. Try it again." And it's not like I was letting her direct the scene, but as long as she felt empowered enough to know that it was fake, then that was good enough for me. What do you guys think?
What was the question?
I just what was set like given sort of the tensions of the themes?
Yeah, I've said this before, and I was talking to folks earlier. There was actually a lot of levity on set. I mean, it's an independent film set. Things are going fast paced. You're always running out of light. But HP and the producing team did a good job of like kind of shielding the performers from that. And between cuts, between takes, like I found myself just kind of I mean, it was hot as hell. It was like that heat wave in SF, and we were just. It was a very familial feel. Obviously, a lot of us are playing family members, but we're not supposed to be like the greatest family members. So it was an awesome place to like kind of explore like creativity and experiment.
And Jonathan, what was your experience like?
Yeah, first I got involved with the film by watching the TFC, True Filipino Channel. They were looking for a for a guy who can speak Ilocano, and I submitted my reel, and I got the part. And thank you very much again, HP. And with regards to your question, I think what's really affected me is Troy trying to hit my kid, and HP was trying to say how. Do you feel about it? What it is as a father that you see somebody try to hit your kid, even though he is not really hitting my kid, but the mere fact that his fist is within like that to my kids, like, how do you feel about it? How is it? It's like getting the anger out and almost trying to me grabbing the pen and hit him on the head, as if like that. And of course, we are all afraid of Troy, and everybody's afraid of Troy, but it all worked out, and HPG really did a good job about it.
Thanks. One of the most, for me, what makes this film so memorable is the way that you play different genres and tones, and sometimes what makes a scene so exciting is I'm not sure which genre direction you're going to take this scene in. So how much of that is kind of, at what point do you start kind of choreographing it genre-wise, say on the set or in the writing or in editing?
The real tightrope walk was in the writing, because it's. I'm going to quote my husband on this. It's something that started a long time ago. People would say, like, you have such tone shifts in there. Like, is there any way you can, like, maybe start with the murder so that way people know that it's going to get really violent? And people were like, yeah, you might want to think about that's what successful movies do. Successful movies are all about, like you have this habit of being, like, overstuffing your movies with ideas and tone shifts. And my husband was like, maybe it's the tone shift that makes it great. And that really empowered me. I was like, yeah, the reason I married you. And and so this is going to sound kind of vulgar, but it was almost mathematical at first, where it's like, okay, well, the first 30 pages ought to feel like the Home for the Holidays Christmas comedy. And when things go dark, maybe it should feel like the slightly didactic Lifetime movie that talks about domestic violence. And then when we go into the actual violence, I really wanted all the violence to happen with Troy to feel really absurd, like almost Looney Tunes. There's a reason why it's literally a frying pan that hits him in the head. Yeah, and by the way, even though that was a fake frying pan, it might as well have been because she hit him pretty hard. Yeah. But yeah, so starting with the script, it's like, okay, so now we are entering wacky territory, and I think for me, my challenge to myself that was inadvertently placed on me by Mark, by my husband, who's one of the lead producers in this film, was. Don't fear the tone shift. Don't fear it. So like whenever it felt like I was like about to apologize for, hey, I know we're going kind of funny right now, but this is the reason why. No, scrap that page. No, let's just go wacky. Because it literally, I do think one feeling I have is the scene before they all attack Troy, when he starts yelling at the mother and saying, I just said people can't sing on this show. Now you're saying he can sing beautifully? Are you even part of this conversation? Clean your fucking ears. And every time I hear that, I'm like, man, that is so fucking harsh. he's really scary in this scene. And we literally go into slapstick from there. And I feel like, you know what? As long as I calibrate it to always just kind of like take a turn that you don't expect, I think it's successful. And you know what? I've always said this about Bitter Melon in my own films. This film might, like, with its tone shift and its abrupt changes, might not be for everybody. You know, so you might hate it, but if you don't hate it, you'll fucking love it.
Well, let's hear from some of the audience. Anyone have questions for HP and the crew? Yeah.
I was wondering if Troy has done any other film.
No. No, I spend most of my time behind the camera. I made a film called Awesome Asian Bad Guys a few years ago. And I made a film like 10 years ago called Mr. Sadman about a Saddam Hussein double who moves to Los Angeles to start his life over. I'm recutting that one. Stay tuned. Yeah, if you got a role for me, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to comment on the lady who plays the mother. She had terrific comic timing and a great deadpan delivery.
She really does. Her name is Josephine De Jesus. She was a voiceover artist in the Philippines who's worked for Nora Honor and other big Filipino celebrities. And she's someone who came to audition at ABS-CBN. Basically, I'd had the young cast, like the younger members of the cast, already in my head for years, and just building it as I went. And they were the one who supplied the pool of the older actors. And she showed up, and yeah, there was just a quality to her that I thought was just so kind of authentic and not overplayed. Right, not overplayed, and I said, let's just do this. I think you've got this. And the funny thing is, the first time she was on set, I think she was doing this thing, and I hope I don't upset anyone by saying this, but I have a lot of experience working with Filipino actors, like from the Philippines, and a lot of times I work with Filipino actors who kind of want to sound American, you know. So she was like trying her best to sound as American as possible. I was like, yeah, let's try that. And like I don't want to say things like, can you sound more Filipino? I don't want to do that, you know. And I definitely don't want to say things like, I want you to meet my mom, now sound like her. You know, I don't want to do that either. But the great thing is she finally stumbled across a line on the first day, and she leaned over, she's like, this is an old person line. I said, yeah. She's like, so do you want me to sound like, like you say you want me to sound more Ilocano, but do you want me to sound, maybe I can sound like my mom. I'm like, let me hear what your mom sounds like. And boom, it was that. And I was like, keep that. Keep that. So she's doing a pretty good impersonation of her own mother.
There was a hand in the way back. Yeah.
Yeah. In most families, the younger brother or younger sibling is usually the one that's, what do you call this? Anyways, I'm just continuing my question. Why did you switch the roles between the siblings? Because usually the big brother is the kuya, you know, and he usually protects the family. But in this instance, you delegated that to the younger brother, and you had the middle child to be the one that's abused and such.
I'm not going to speak like I'm like some cultural touchstone with, to live by. I can just tell you that this is based on me and my family. There is so much that's true about this movie that my family knows about, and they're really proud of this film. Luckily, the only fictional thing is the murder. But the truth is, growing up, like the other Filipino families that I grew up, because I grew up in that neighborhood that's in the film, and you know, so I had a lot of Filipino friends, and the truth is, there was a lot of responsibility kind of placed on the youngest one. So I hear what you're saying, but what I do think, I do recognize the dynamic you're talking about, but I think that's normal for Filipino families that have more Filipino nationals in the family, and we were 3 Filipino American boys, and there was a difference there. So imagine having the oldest one be Filipino American with a very, very American sensibility who just wants to get away from the family. That's where the difference is.
Yes, the movie is a lot about violence, domestic violence, and the cycle of violence, and how it touches everybody in the family. And I mean, I'm kind of like perturbed because I was so happy when he got his when Troy got his comeuppance, but it's like, oh, that's just perpetuating the cycle of violence, and he essentially, I mean, my reading is that he kills his father.
Yeah.
So it's just, so I guess what's the answer? How do you break it? And is that something you were trying to answer, or?
I never want to answer anything. Like the question you asked is what the ending is asking. So it's interesting to me because I hear this a lot. I was happy when he got his comeuppance, and then people say, but then I was let down when I saw him, and I'm thinking, so you think the answer is violence? That's part of the problem, which is why the tagline of the movie is when people say they want apologies, they don't want apologies, they want blood. And I do feel like we're in a time right now, and we're so binary right now. And where it's like, right now we're talking about canceling people, hashtag cancel the Keith Stansfield, cancel Boots Riley because he doesn't stand up for Black Lives Matter or whatever because they perceive something a certain way. What I find interesting is different people find the ending either happy or sad depending on where they come from. I do feel like a lot of Filipinos when they watch this are like, wow, exile is a fate worse than death. He's been exiled. But a lot of more American people look at it like, oh, he has a second chance, he's free. So it's, it's a happy but bad ending, right? While a lot of Filipinos see it like, oh, it's a sad but happy ending, It's sad because, this happened, but it's happy because he's been exiled. So it's exile is a very big part of a lot of Filipino stories. But I didn't want to be like super overt and say like, well, in Filipino culture, he's actually having the worst fate. I wanted to ask if any of you have watched any of my movies, like all of my movies end with questions, because I don't want to purport to be some genius who's going to solve domestic violence. I can only share my story.
We have time for one more question, right here.
So the question was, as being Filipino, did I ever feel the need to explain things in the film for non-Filipinos or non-POCs? Absolutely not. At the test screenings, when people would say, like, what would really help is maybe there was a white character who could help me feel less alienated, and I'd be like, oh, so you feel kind of alienated watching this film because you don't feel like this family reflects what you grew up with. Welcome to my fucking world.
Satisfactory answer. I know that you have plane crack to cash.
Yeah,
so.
cinematographer, the funders who funded this film, they're actually screening Bitter Melon right now, and they're like, get your butt here for the Q&A in San Francisco. So after this, if you have anything you want to ask me, like get it out now. But if you don't, I'm gonna run to that plane. But I do want to say thank you so much for coming, and thank you, San Diego. This is the end of the festival run for all Asian American filmmakers, and there's a reason for that. You end with a bang, and I gave like a perfunctory acceptance speech last night because I didn't know I was going to win. But I just want you to know this has been a really emotional homecoming for me. This is the best thing I could expect, and it's perfect because we're about to release theatrically on December 7th.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, HP, Jonathan, and Patrick. And thank you to Kat Cole for her short film, Maybe. And thank you all for being here today. See you at more screenings.
Thank you.